This unfired bullet recently found is a silent witness to the final minutes of the battle.
This was the one we picked up on Last Stand Hill just the other day. It's one of the cavalry rounds.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Well, to think that some young guy got off a boat in New York and wound up frantically trying to shove this into a Springfield carbine in the last moments of his life, fighting against a force of individuals who were fiercely trying to defend their hope of existence, and all of that swirling around.
And that's the bit of evidence left behind of all those kind of tumultuous events.
It's difficult to have this in my hand and not be moved by it.
It was a desperate, grim struggle. Lasted only briefly. And in fact, not only was there no gallant last stand, the last fighting did not even take place here.
Custer was outnumbered, outgunned, and outfought. But if the mythical last stand wasn't on Custer Hill, where did the last of Custer's men die? The Battle of the Little Bighorn lasted no more than 90 minutes. 268 men were killed, 210 of them with Custer. After a 2-day siege, Reno and Bentine's horrified troopers came to bury the dead. They could only identify 56 of their comrades, so badly had they been mutilated.
And when they found out it was Custer's outfit, they went up there and mutilated these bodies, cut their throats, arms off, feet off.
The variety of injuries that we were able to see in the bone remains, in the hard tissue, were incredibly graphic.
It's a skull that's been shot from the back and top.
We repeatedly saw cut marks in various bones.
And these are cuts that went through 2 or 3 inches of muscles before finally hitting the bone.
Blunt force trauma included blows to the face, literally would shatter the skull and shatter the jaw.
And you can't see them here, but there are actually cuts on the inside of the socket, too, indicating that they removed the person's thigh.
We would see sharp force trauma consistent with scalping, literally lifting the scalp, just repeated knife marks.
These are cuts suggesting castration of the trooper.
The Indians often mutilated the dead to impair their spirits in the afterlife. Now the earthly remains of 44 troopers have been found. In one case, a skull fragment would give clues to its identity.
These are the facial bones recovered at markers 32 and 33. What we have are the nose and upper teeth and left eye orbit of the individual who's determined to be between 35 and 45 years of age. The wear on the teeth indicate that he, as a male, was a pipe smoker, worn his teeth down. In this area here, there was a blunt instrument blow to the face, causing the eye socket to be crushed and the nose to be broken. So we have evidence of trauma at or about the time of death. The heavy, high cheekbones suggest Native American ancestry, and the teeth themselves suggest white ancestry, indicating a racially admixed individual. The only person who fits this description is Mitch Boyer, Custer's scout, who was killed at the Little Bighorn.
When the bone fragment is superimposed on a picture of Mitch Boyer, the match is uncanny. It was Mitch Boyer who saved the life of Joe Medicine Crow's grandfather when he told the Scots to leave. His remains were found below Custer Hill, near to a place called Deep Ravine. Indian accounts speak of 28 men buried there, but there are no grave markers. Was this the last stand of the Little Bighorn?
Tall Bull, a Northern Cheyenne, was there, and he says, I heard a big war whoop that soldiers were coming. Soldiers came on foot and ran right through us into the deep ravine. And this was the last of the fight, and the men were killed in this gully. So the last fighting was not on Last Stand Hill.
We saw soldiers start running down the hill towards us. Nearly all of them were afraid. I think they were so scared they didn't know what they were doing. Some of them shot their guns in the air. Iron Hawk, Hunk Papa Sue.
This is the upper reaches of Deep Ravine. The last fighting took place here. We have Indian cartridge cases up along the sides of the ravine here, indicating Indians firing down at soldiers who were trying to hide, to escape, to evade. And we also have historical accounts, Indian and white, talking about soldiers' bodies found down here. The mystery of Deep Ravine is simply, where are the men who died here? And we have looked, but haven't yet found them. Somewhere, perhaps where we're standing, are 28 bodies, maybe more, waiting to be found. It must have been a frightening experience. It must have been terrible. My feeling is war is terrible. It's a horrible thing, and people had to die. People had to defend. Too bad it had to happen that way.
The last fighting was at Deep Ravine, not Custer Hill. There was no heroic last stand.
We believe this to be Vincent Charlie, a soldier who died at the Little Bighorn. He represents one of 268 men killed at the Little Bighorn. He was foreign-born, just like 40% of the soldiers were. Swiss immigrant. He's a little taller than average at 5'10", give or take a little bit, and he's a little older, in between 25 and 30 years of age, when most were only around 22. So he does really represent many of these people. So to put a face on this skull allows us to see one person who lived and died at the Little Bighorn.
I like him. I think he's somebody I'd like to know.
Vincent Charlie is now reunited with his fellow troopers in the mass grave at the Little Bighorn battlefield. Custer's remains are said to lie at West Point. More than 50 Indian warriors and an unknown number of Indian women and children also died that day.
The reason why the Indians finally decided to make their last stand, because they were being pushed out of their land and massacred from here and there. So it was Sitting Bull's last stand, not Custer's last stand.
The work of Douglas Scott and Richard Fox has confirmed the Indian stories. Now, after more than a century, the battlefield recognizes not just their oral history, but also their fallen dead. In June 1876, Lakota and Cheyenne warriors defeated Custer's 7th Cavalry, but their victory was short-lived. Never again would the Northern Plains Indians have the freedom of the plains. It was the beginning of the end of their way of life.